So if your expectation is you're going to go from zero to marketing in 6 months, and you're going to be driving a pipe that's as big as you know what, right? Then probably not going to happen. Wing It Podcast, goosedigital.com, episode 73. Who do we have?
Chris O'Neill.
Robin Kroll.
Kevin Butler.
Michael Tuxani. All right. Welcome, everyone.
In the studio.
We're back in the studio. It's been, I think we've only really got like one in the studio recently, but then seeing all of our snippets as part of our brand awareness initiatives, they look so much better and sound so much better when we're doing it here versus at home, remote.
Conversation's so much more dynamic.
Yeah, you can actually see and interrupt and
that Zoom lag just
Yeah.
isn't there.
Yeah, no Zoom
A
lag.
little visual cues.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think we want to do more of these internally, right? We're not going to talk about the pandemic, but that's gotten in the way of doing these here. So hopefully we're through some of that. Fingers crossed. Most of us in this room have had COVID, so we're good.
Most of us.
Most of us, not all of us, but we've got super immunity, so you're safe too. All right, so we're talking about human resources today, right? We're talking about kind of the trends we're seeing in marketing teams that are kind of compounded because of the Great Resignation. You know, we're seeing this trend of people leaving and changing roles, and then I think on adding to that the Great Resignation concepts, which I don't think we're going to get into a lot of that, but certainly a bunch of our deals and a bunch of our customers have been hit with varying levels of staff changes. So we wanted to say, like, you know, this kind of really impacts growth organizations that want to drive marketing and put marketing programs in place. And then, you know, you have people leave. So I guess we want to maybe talk a little bit about what are we seeing? Where are we seeing it? So, what, you know, Chris, do you want to kick that off in terms of pipeline and our deal flows and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So, I don't know when the timing came down for the Great Resignation. Was that like December 15th, 2021, or sometime a little bit before that?
It's when everybody announced that they were forced to come back into the office.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's call it
the
that.
settling of the pandemic and its impact.
Yeah.
Got it. Right. So I think that's probably about right, somewhere in that sort of late December. So we went into the year with a very, very optimistic pipe for the first quarter. And we had no less than 6 substantial opportunities. Didn't die, but just got postponed. Why? Because we had people from all levels of the organization, from CMOs all the way through to, marketing coordinators, shift to other places. And then what happened was the remaining staff had to fill in the blanks and determine who was going to do what. And that process disrupted all of the timing that was sort of leaning on, February and March of 2022. And things are postponed. So of course, that's the impact from us, the sales pipeline that we observed. And again, the thing that was really interesting was that it did not affect in on our pipeline anyways, any particular area of the organization in marketing. It was all the way from like several people at the very executive level, all the way through to sort of the doers and the people that were setting up campaigns.
And I think there's probably different reasons in there for, people at the top versus the doers, but it doesn't change the fact that now you've got companies that were engaging an agency on top of their internal resources in order to get stuff done and move into 2022 with some energy around marketing. Yeah. And now that's been shifted back. These organizations have been pausing, having to
It's a great reminder of the impact everyone has in an organization and on a team, whether you're the most senior, heavily relied on resource, or whether not so much. It's kind of like a Jenga tower. You just take out one block and the foundation and the strength of the pillar starts wobbling, maybe a little, maybe a lot, but that's kind of what we saw, right? And all of that has impact as to this decision we're making. Are we agency ready or marketing campaigning ready? And all that kind of concern, doubt creeps in, and then it says, Chris, we need to push this out a quarter.
Yep.
And I think one of the other things to also think about is, if you're thinking about the resignation, people might have this image of this drain coming from a company. But in a growth organization, and I would say that most of the companies that we work are companies that want to grow or they want to change, right? They want to move forward. So in order to do that, they're probably growing internally. So they're adding in new roles. They need to fill new positions. So in addition to losing people, they also need to expand. So it's kind of a double whammy, the net result is that they do not have enough people. They don't have the right people to be in these roles. And suddenly they look at that and they say, oh, well, how are we going to move forward if we don't have these people in place? And that's when we're seeing all these impacts that they want to grow, but they think, oh, do we have to pause until we fill in these gaps?
And, in terms of some of the, day-to-day things, we observe, and we've observed for years, when a day-to-day, tech marketer leaves an organization, basically their newsletters are not going out, their cross-sells are not going out, things are just not, continuing to happen. When you have that happen now, it's even more difficult to find a replacement, member to kind of fill that in. And a lot of times the more senior people in marketing don't really know what skills are needed in actually fulfilling that role. So it's like you've got the delay in terms of hiring. So they see that's I don't know, what was it today, probably a 12-week process to hire somebody. And then there's the determination of what is this person actually going to be able to do? What sort of functions are they actually going to be able to accomplish for us until we know what it is that's left over?
I think so. There's two parts there, right? I think the hiring, anyone who's hired, a marketer probably inside the last year and a half probably knows this really well, but the amount of competitiveness in getting a talented person is just off the charts, right? It's just everything from the story you sell, the environment they'd be working in. Yeah. Obviously, compensation is a huge thing, but autonomy, responsibility, just the industry you sell to, like all of these things and more, that's one part of it. I feel like that moves quicker than ever. We're hearing stories of end-to-end processes being under 2 weeks now.
Wow.
Between application and offer. It's that quick. But the ramp up, if you're lucky enough to secure that talented marketer, it's getting he or she ramped up to be able to make impact. That's the longer part of the burn, if you're lucky enough to get the resource in the first place.
And I wonder, just Kev, just to kind of follow on one of your points, one of the things that employees are looking for, they want to go to an organization where they have some kind of connection to the business. They're excited about it. They have to have the right technology. They have to be in the growth mode, right? So if you think an organization saying, well, we want to be appealing to hire new talent, but in order to be in that growth mode, they have to have the talent. So it's a little bit of a catch-22, and maybe that's causing them to not, to have to pause as well. So there's a whole bunch of factors, I guess, that are probably contributing to what we're seeing, or the impact of what we're seeing.
So the impact, right? So I think we've seen I want to talk a little bit about what might be contributing more so than just the Great Resignation, because I think we touched on that. We don't really want to go too much into that in terms of
lots of information.
We already know that that's a thing for probably most companies, but then we look at the marketing area, and I think there's probably similarities to sales in this regard, that in order to get effective from a sales perspective, you really need to understand the company's value proposition and how to engage a customer in a relationship and a conversation. And that's going to vary depending on if you've got a brand and if you're sort of an unknown organization. But with the marketing side, it's difficult to just plug people in, and you started alluding to that, Kev, where if you've got, hey, here's a 10-step process and, you have to work within our ERP to verify these orders and this is how you do it, you can plug people into that. But now you're bringing really it's a strategic function, to marketing in your business. And you're sort of trying to bring anywhere from some of these intermediate or, even senior people in to say, hey, can you take our business forward? Can you help us, develop a pipeline of business? And, what I think part of what we're observing is that process isn't straightforward. And most of our clients, big or small, frankly, even some of the biggest ones that we work with, publicly traded companies, like they're still in the early stages of figuring out how to develop that pipeline. So they don't have consistent numbers and metrics that they, hand to us on a platter and say, we would like to see our end-to-end marketing process improved by 15%. Can, that's worth $1 million to us. Can you guys help us down that journey? Usually they're like, hey, we've done a handful or, a bunch of stuff. Some of it's worked, some of it's not. We really don't have a handle on our data and our insights. We want to drive more business, but we've gone through 3 senior marketers in the last 4 years and we're still start, stop. Like we don't have something yet. So maybe we could talk a little bit about like, what do we think those challenges are that might lead to a marketing person to be like, you know what, greener pastures, I'm just going to go, you think you called it a lottery ticket, I'm just going to go to that next organization and try my luck there.
Well, there's so much there in what you just said. Let me start. We'll probably circle around and have a few weigh-ins each, but I think it's really hard to be successful in marketing in any industry or organization if you don't fundamentally understand the value the service or solution the product brings to the ideal customer. Like how do you tell that story? How can you create effective ad copy and conversions and help sales articulate a strong message and value prop? Like you just can't do it. And that needs time. First and foremost, probably 6, 9 months, maybe a year, depending on the individual, their comfort in an industry, the nuances of such an industry. Some are easier than others, more regulated.
And the
industries.
nuances of the customer. Even if you've got industry experience, you now have an organization that presumably has their own take on.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. So first and foremost, it's all of that. Can the marketer really get a handle on that space? And does the organization who is employing the marketer, do they have the patience and the ability to ramp that person up to really understand it? Will they support him or her, etc.? Is the team there strong around it? And I think, to me, we've seen instances of some marketers it's just not a great fit. Okay, that happens. And we've also seen instances where the marketer themselves is strong enough to do this, the organization doesn't have patience, or the marketer saying, I don't feel like I'm being supported, and says, this is a white hot market. I can go get a job anywhere else. And the lottery ticket comment, Mike, you alluded to, is there's many great growing orgs right now of which I could jump into pretty quick. And the time's never been easier for me to do so. And if I'm not feeling it here and there's enough of a struggle or resistance, then I'll throw my hat in somewhere else and give it another go. There's never been a more acceptable time to do that either. Most hiring managers who really want talent will totally look the other way on that sort of storyline and say, okay, he or she's cutting their losses quick and moving on, which further compounds, Chris, your issue, right? As far as instability in an organization, we're not ready for an agency, we got to push out. So that's, I guess, part one of...
Yeah. And when I look at some of these, and it's only kind of getting worse to some degree, but I look at some of these LinkedIn profiles and you're like, oh, well, a year, 14 months. And then you just see this constant sort of changeover, even in some of our, our vendor partners that we're close to, where we can see people that have come in and turned over 3 times, almost the entire teams. And you just wonder, there's something more to this space. And I think we've always heard, you always kind of hear about these CMOs that kind of come in and they have a shorter lifespan. I think some of that, though, is kind of the larger companies where you're betting big on like a rebrand strategy or a,
but it is shrinking though, right? Like it's gone from something like it used to be a few years ago. I think this is Gartner. They said it was about, something like 22 to 24 months average tenure of a CMO. And now it's kind of dropping into the 14 to 16. Like it's sharp. in
Right.
terms of the decline.
Right. So you need to have some ability, I think, as a senior individual, and forget CMO for a minute. Like I think we're talking about maybe even the
Director level.
director level, VP level that has to set those expectations on an organization where you're looking at that being, are they comfortable in these types of programs? Are they able to communicate, like to your point, on how long it might take? You talked about that earlier, Chris, before we got on, where, sometimes the senior marketer, relies on someone else to sort of help them bridge that gap back up to the executive to say, well, we're trying to do this, but this is going to take some time. And I just think there's a lot of these little elements that come into this where if you don't have the backbone or you don't have the trust within the executive, to your point, like around, do you feel like you're being supported?
Can I be successful?
Yeah. Can I be successful here? Then very quickly you're like, well, you know what? Maybe I need to go somewhere else because, I'm not getting the pipeline. The business really wants the pipeline. It's been 8 months and we've, under this pressure cooker environment, we've done the best we can. I'm not saying it should take a year, but I do think this industry has it kind of worse than others in terms of, right now in terms of like, hey, you if that's how you're going in, then, you're probably going to lose people.
I've seen 2 instances though. It's not black and white. What I mean is, okay, if it's a really tough situation, it's just not working, people cut bait and move on. Mm-hmm. It's not even just that. I've seen 2 instances where talented marketer was in a good environment and just said, I think I want more. I think I can do better. There's something that would appear to be greener from a opportunity perspective. They left a pretty good opportunity, one they didn't have an issue with.
Yeah.
In both cases, to do something a bit bigger, a bit better, what they perceive to be a bit stronger. Even that's pretty wild because pre-pandemic, that wasn't happening. You'd say, well, I'm pretty good here. Let's see it out. Now it's no.
Yeah.
And that they were good opportunities and they weren't unhappy. So it's like, it really shifts the whole thing, I think.
So another perspective on that is what I've also seen is recognizing the talent within a company. So as the company grows, they're promoting from within. So seeing that, this is talent that we do want to keep. We value their input. We want to keep them in the organization, and for various reasons, we go ahead and they go ahead and promote them. So they vacate their existing role. So the organization continues to get value from that employee, and that employee gets even more value because they're moving up within the organization. But then that leaves gaps or holes a little bit further down. And one of the challenges there is this concept of the experience of expertise. So like, as you were both talking about, it does take a while to understand the company's values, the product or service, the ideal customer. And some of that is things that you can learn. So, technology can be learned, and after a certain amount of time, you can be proficient on a technology, but it's the expertise that is really required to drive value, and that expertise does take longer.
I thought where you were going to go was that when the organizations don't have enough room to promote,
I was thinking the other way around.
But it's both. It can be both, right? Where all of a sudden you've got a little bit of a team. The team's kind of been in place for 2 years, and you're thinking as the lead marketer, hey, this is great, but I don't have a role to take my, digital marketer or demand gen resource and they're sort of like, I've been doing this for a period of time and I want to do other things. It's like, well, we don't really have that here, right? Like there's only so much that we can open up in terms of opportunities. And even beyond salary and stuff, it's like we still need that work done, right? And I think that's where we start to look at, using an agency as at least one alternative. I think there's a bunch of things that we've touched on that people can start to think about. But, if you say there's a level of activity here that at some point in a 2 to 3 year career, people aren't going to want to continue to do that.
Right.
And they want to be more strategic. So how can we leverage these capable agencies to plug in and provide that continuity so that, like you said, Robin, hey, now maybe we can give that person more strategic lens in the organization, and then we don't have this turnover within our tools, within our environment, within our ad system, all this kind of stuff that we see, right? So it's not sort of the senior, but it's also at that mid to intermediate.
Yeah, and the agency value proposition works in both situations, I think. So, the good news is that when they are promoting from within is because the company is growing, as opposed to, well, we don't have a place to move people up, so maybe the company's not growing as much. But other way, there's that gap where an agency can fill in.
One of the things that I've been observing in chat groups and stuff is RevenueOps the right sort of place for marketing? And
That's a highly controversial question.
Highly controversial, but it kind of like comes down to where is it that you're going to plug an agency into? What kind of problems are you having? Because in some cases, I feel like agencies are contacted sometimes when they can't find somebody that is able to move the needle. And it's like, well, maybe an agency can help me move the needle.
Oh, yeah,
but
right.
I want to do things this way. So it's like, you sort of see where a marketer comes into an organization under a strong sort of sales background leader who feels that they know exactly what needs to be done, directs that agency or directs that individual what needs to be done. The results are not there, and then things don't go well, either for the agency, for the individual, or for the leader of the organization. Nobody gets anything good out of that.
On the marketing and RevOps, I think that's a bigger company challenge that I'm not going to sit here and solve. Every company is a bit different. The smaller companies, I just don't think that's an issue. You're all driving towards one.
Well, I think maybe what Chris was saying was RevOps, but really sales led.
I know. I just wanted
to
touch on the RevOps because I see it on LinkedIn all the time. It's this huge debate, and it's like what I observe is a lot of the time the people weighing in with these strong opinions. I don't think it matters. The orgs aren't big enough to really need that. Yeah. When you're a lot bigger and you're more like a mid-market enterprise software vendor, that's a legitimate challenge. As far as the sales-led stuff, one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is the sales process, the mechanics of taking a good quality lead and understanding or interpreting behaviors and actions, and even the qualification questions as part of that first touch in the sales conversation, to understand if there is an immediate need, the budgets, not all the stuff that we all know, but that never gets talked about as part of closing leads. And so then you have to look at, well, what's the way in which we're bringing in leads, and how are we, is it like a really good call to action? Is it a good call to action, but doesn't really align with the sales process that we can sell them something that we do? And no one ever talks about that. And I feel like not all leads are made equal, and they're not all brought in the same way, but you could have a really great lead ready to buy with a bad process behind it, and you're not getting anywhere. And it works the other way too. But we don't talk about that. And I think that's really critical. And so the sales leader has to definitely be open to that.
I think that's like when you look at, it's a really great point. And it's with an e-commerce system, you might have great traffic and low conversions because the platform, the cart, whatever's going on the site, it's just not optimized, right? But from a marketing perspective, you see, well, but we've actually been able to generate some interest on whatever said channel and bring them to the site. Yeah. They've got the pages per session. They've got all these great numbers, but they're not making it through. Maybe there's actually a technical error on that site that is causing some of that traffic not to convert. So then you think, well, the whole initiative was not working. And it's like, well, actually, no. And it's the same for what you're saying for marketing, is that, it's really important to be able to measure both sides of those coins the best that you can, to say, hey, we've got this, these are great organizations. We've got the traffic, we're getting interest. So our marketing team is actually not like, it's doing a decent job, but it's falling down once the leads come in.
And I guess on the revenue ops side, it's kind of like there could be that could be going on where there's good value being generated from a pure marketing perspective, but because the revenue isn't there, everyone gets shot. Everyone gets, right? If they don't get shot, they get basically called down. Like, it's like you're not getting it done, but in fact, there's actually some progress that's there. That could be pretty demotivating to a marketer.
This is a great conversation. I feel like this is this whole big conversation we can have, because I think it's such an important topic. It's like a whole other subject.
From the resource,
But to bring it back to the HR, it's like I really
bring it back. Just bring it back.
Feels like he or she's driving the value. They see, they're like, this is the right
Right.
audience. We feel strongly about the message. They say, I don't know if I can be successful here, though. We've got a kind of a strong-armed, sales-led view, and there's some
Right.
sort of issue going on in that chain of lead to customer, and it's like, no matter what I'm doing, I don't know if I can.
I
actually
think
make
this
that
is
work.
I think this is a big thing. I mean, I know we're talking, you know, I don't think we're hypothesizing about the issues, because some of us around the table have actually been through these types of issues with organizations. But on top of that, we've observed it within our own customer base, where
Yeah.
you've got, I don't want to say unreasonable expectations, but you've got these expectations from the business that we need to hit a certain amount of revenue, and the environment is just not, like you said, set up for success. And I think this is more and more, it needs to be talked about more and more and more. If you're trying to develop marketing capabilities, like you need to create this environment of success. And if you don't, what's going to happen is, unfortunately, due to the hot market, is you're going to see this jumping. I mean, one of our customers literally brought us into, I think, 3 or 4 other accounts in 2.5 years or something. You know, the director
Yeah.
level has been to 3 different or 4 different organizations, now on their 4th organization. So why is that? And it has all to do with not being able to feel like you're in an environment that can be successful, not the individual being capable, right? So I think that that's a huge, you know,
If you're a marketer interviewing for roles right now, whether you're senior or earlier on in your career, I think the number one question to ask is, why did the person leave this role that we're talking about
Right.
today? And how long were they there? And then 2, I think you need to understand, how are decisions made across both the sales and marketing vehicle? What kind of inputs required? How successful have you been taking good leads and actually making something of it? Because your success is very much tied to your sales counterpart. Chris, you kind of alluded
Yeah,
to that as
sure.
well. And if you've got a real rock star who can take something and really close it, and you feel comfortable that you can deliver quality leads, you're probably going to have a great partnership with sales.
Yeah.
And if you feel like that salesperson, you're like, I'm looking at he or she, and I just don't think they can close. Can you be
that's-
successful?
And that's becoming more and more apparent. You know, people, they want a concept of job satisfaction, feeling like they're contributing, feeling like they can be successful. More than ever, that has been important, right? Because that's, you know, from a career perspective, from a personal perspective, you want to have that feeling. And, before, in the over 2 years ago, so we won't use the C word, people were in a lot of organizations because they felt that we don't really have a choice. We just got to slog through it. But now there's I want to feel empowered. I want to feel like I'm contributing to the success, and understanding that being part of that success, yes, you have a role, but guess what? The organization, you have to be in line with the organization. So if you're marketing, how does sales work? How does senior leadership work? And that's becoming more important to people as they're choosing where they're going and whether or not they're staying.
yeah. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I mean, I think these organizations, they all, like I said, for the most part, the organizations that we're engaging are not, they don't have this thriving marketing pipeline, this lead to revenue system that they bring to us and say, hey, it's X% here, Y% there, Z% there. As a system, we want to plug you guys in here and raise it up by 30%. Can we do that, right? That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing it's haphazard at best. It's probably been a ton of stop and starts. They've run some stuff and they've had some value, but then they're seeing this turnover in the space. So I think that the organizations, they want to grow, to your point, Robin, or maybe they are growing, but they're trying to establish their marketing program, their marketing system. And no matter what, the team has to be able to turn that into something, right? So if you're the marketing team that's on the ground, you have to be able to turn that into a positive contribution for the business. So I think it's just kind of recognizing as the ownership and as that and the marketing leadership to say, how long is this going to take? Where are we seeing really good results? Where do we have gaps? And being able to, I think, uphold that conversation. And again, you're not going to give someone 2 years of rope, right? But you can't give someone 6 months of rope when your business isn't already thriving from a marketing perspective, and expect that they're going to be able to turn that around and turn it into something positive. So
I think if most orgs want to be in full successful growth mode and scaling that growth, that's where you want to be. Not everyone is. the next best place to be is sort of what I would deem or term a marketing friendly environment, whereby you have an acceptable amount of rope.
Yeah.
You've got support from different people and or departments within the organization. And most importantly, you've got patience and budget to support the learnings along the way, because we're not there that we can scale it.
Right.
Those are probably the biggest core things. If you have them and you've got some smart people around the room, you can probably make traction on that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, well, thanks, guys. This is In Studio 101, episode 74. Just kidding,
Feels good.
73. So, thank you. Catch you later.
See you next time.
Bye.
Till the next one.